Everyone, and welcome to the panel on Robert Jordan's notes. Up here, we have some of the select few people who have read the vast majority of his world notes. That is the notes that he actually wrote for working on the story. A lot of what is in the Addlestone Library is drafts of books, and those are interesting too. You can look them over and see what kind of changes Harriet made. And she made a lot of interesting changes. I think some of you might be surprised by how much influence she had over Robert Jordan's prose, because sometimes she would scratch stuff out and just write something different, and that would be what was in the book. And yeah, you see a lot of that looking through the drafts. Did you look at the drafts, Linda?
Not too much. What I was looking at was the early stuff. So
Yeah.
the early drafts, yes.
Yeah. So
Which changed hugely.
Linda actually went with me to Charleston last year, and we spent a week in the library, and like we barely talked to each other the whole time. We just worked our butts off like for 5 days that week. As soon as the library opened, we were there until it closed.
Yeah, they pretty much chucked us out.
Yeah. I think we exasperated them a little bit, but even spending a whole week in there, like we feel like we barely got anything done. It's just, there's such a massive amount of stuff. But we did manage to swipe a lot of it our first year there, so that's good. And that's what we're going to be showing you today on the screen. So, you want to start us out, Linda? I know you have some stuff that you'd like to talk about, particularly that you find interesting.
Okay, so what have you got? Sorry, I've got my
I'll
shoulders.
cut your reading.
Okay, I'll start with that then. So, looking at the oath rod, there is confirmation that Leia knows what the oath rod was used for in the Age of Legends, but she'd never actually seen one. And so she didn't connect it with the binders. So she knew what binders were, but she never realised that the oath rod of the Ars Loae is a binder. And also, binders came in other forms. The rod form is not the only one, because that's what's in the notes. And as far as I know, that's not the thing that's being used or said anywhere else, except in that particular paragraph there.
There are all sorts of little things like this that we found in the notes that add a little bit of context to things in the books that never actually made it into the books. And some of them were real bombshells, which some of you may or may not have heard about. We can talk about some of those today. Did you have anything in particular you wanted to talk about, Matt?
Yeah, there was this one part where he said that land fear killed Asmodean, so that's the notes. That's the notes.
That's
Did you guys see that one?
That's not actually.
I went to the library after you guys. No, I just like all the little things that...
Hey Jen, where's Jason? He's supposed to be here. I sent him a text already and he's like ignoring me or something. He specifically requested to be on this panel.
Of course he did. He might be passed out somewhere.
Somebody saw him walking around, so apparently he's alive.
That was Jason in zombie form.
Okay. Zombie Jason has been spotted.
The stuff that I like from the notes are just it's always the little kind of quirky one-off things where a lot of you, who was here last year in the notes panel? Maybe, oh wow. Okay, so actually a lot of you were not here. So, so it might be useful for us three to just cover some quick things that others have heard at this point, but where decisions that Robert Jordan didn't make, but things that might interest those of you who would know that the book went one way, but it could have gone a lot of different ways. So maybe let's throw out some of our favorites of those.
Yeah.
And so, for example, Moraine was at some point going to become the Amarillo. I mean, that's what he thought, and which is a lot of us, right? And you can see there's a lot of these threads in the book, right? And you're like, oh, I think she's going to become the Amarillo because, well, she was going to become. He just decided not to go down that road.
Yeah, but, and also, speaking of Moraine, Rand was going to be the one who rescued her.
Yeah, that was Nynaeve had some terrible things that were going to happen to her that never did. It involved
Rape.
And Shadowhar.
Yeah.
It was, so things you're just like, I'm glad I didn't see that scene, or that didn't happen to a character I liked, things like that.
He had a lot of really dark things planned in the beginning that he probably eventually decided were a bit too dark.
Well, I think that he wanted to go for a PG rating, and that some of that stuff was never going to be PG.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he wanted to keep it PG with his main characters, but some of that stuff kind of got shunted onto the more minor characters like Morgause, or however you pronounce her name, Morgaze. I usually pronounce it Morgaze in my head, but I think that's wrong.
And Galad was going to have a lot of nasty stuff happen to him, which didn't happen. Galad, he was going to be a dark friend.
Yeah, he was also...
See, like I'm saying, it's all stuff you believe. It was actually true.
That one went over well.
Now, 90 was going to kill Moraine. So, I mean, again, things that you kind of were like, hey, she really does kind of hate Moraine. And that was going to happen.
Yeah, and Galad was also originally supposed to channel, and Galad.
Yes.
And we're still not entirely sure that he can't, because he was never tested, right? So, yeah, but that was originally going to be part of the story, and obviously it wasn't. Yes, it does run in his family. Go ahead. No.
I was going to read this little paragraph here because I think instead of just giving you just like a little, it says, Nynaeve will at some point after Moraine takes the Amaryllis seat seemingly slay Moraine or cause Moraine's death. This should involve something about a cave.
Yeah, because that's the Merlin Nimue thingy.
In fact, Moraine will be trapped halfway between life and death. She will eventually be able to return to the world of men or be brought back, whether this is an actual rebirth or whether she returns in some fashion other than as a living, breathing human is yet to be decided. So, yeah, you can kind of, again, what's cool about it is you get to see the different threads that he pulled or twisted. And I mean, if you think about the way he talked about the wheel, you can kind of have fun with this about ways that he was the Tavaran in many ways, right? He was like pulling these threads that were going to go one way, and he shifted them then. So.
And the Ogier were going to be more dwarf-like, so they would have only an affinity for stone rather than plant life. And so they were going to be shorter than other men. And they would work as lumbermen, so they'd actually chop down trees rather than assist their growth. So yeah, there was... Yeah, it's a huge, this was very early on. And then they'd still have the anger, the idea of the anger though, and putting a long handle on their axe, basically converting their axe into a wood chopping implement.
Yeah, everyone here has heard that Taim was going to be Demandra. That was a legit real, he was, Demandra was Taim. Or Taim was Falk.
And he killed Asmodeus.
And he killed Asmodeus. That was legit. Right. Lanfear, that was totally made up. I don't know, some crazy stuff.
Yeah, that is legit. And we're not exactly sure when he changed his mind. Linda thinks he changed his mind around Path of Daggers. All we know for sure is that it's no later than Crossroads of Twilight, because that's when he said it outright on book tour. But there are also some pretty concrete hints in Winter's Heart that he had changed his mind. And then you start going backwards in like Path of Daggers. There are hints where they're like a little bit more subtle and debatable. But somewhere around then,
I think he got cold feet right about him during Path of Daggers because he realizes so many fans had tweaked.
Yeah, like I don't even know what to think about, whether it had to do with fans having figured it out. Because, obviously Taim and Dread was a very popular theory, but so was the theory that Grendel killed Asmodean. And he kind of switched on those because originally Asmodean's killer was somebody who had been ruled out as far as fans were concerned in the prologue of Lord of Chaos. Everybody thought that Demandred had ruled himself out when he said that the Dark One knew more about Asmodean than he. So nobody believed it was Demandred, and everybody thought it was Grendel. So, I don't know, it's like he went with the more popular fan theory on one and then ditched the more popular fan theory on the other. So I'm not sure. Brandon said to be real cautious in thinking that he changed his mind because fans had figured it out, because he might have just decided that it didn't work for his story and changed it for reasons that we don't know anything about. But there's still no hint of what Demandred was actually doing in the notes if he wasn't magic tying. Like, I never found anything.
No,
Did
I
you?
didn't either.
Yeah.
No.
So there's nothing about Shara or anything like that. And Brandon has actually said publicly that he had to come up with most of that backstory on his own. And that's why he wrote the sequence that eventually became River of Souls. And that was pretty much 100% Brandon. Then it got cut from Memory of Light.
But just from Demandred's parallels though, especially the one to Hannibal, he obviously was going to bring in an army from outside the mainland. It was just a matter of which continent they chose it to come from. So, and either would work, because both continents have a Chinese influence or Asiatic influence. So neither was going to conflict with his sort of themes.
One of the ones for those who were here last year, this was not discussed, at least I don't recall this in our panel, about Liang. Apparently he was going to flee to become a hermit and return for the final battle. Like, that was part of this.
Lancelot.
Yeah, so
well, more like Lancelot, because
yeah.
that's who he was based on.
yeah, so it's kind of like, you're kind of thinking like, okay, that would be an interesting twist.
Yeah.
You end up, I mean, at least in my opinion, you end up, when you read these, being happy that he made the choices that he made, other than Grendel. So.
The Dark One's name was originally Sarkhan, which actually throws an interesting light on two other names, the Kara Khan. It's spelled slightly differently, but certainly pronounced the same. And also on the Sangreal Sarkana. So, as though they're all three are sort of fairly interrelated or dark or shadowy figures. And then gradually, by the time the book was published, the first book was published, it was settled on Shaitan, which is the Arabic form of Satan. I was going to sort of look at he even debated, there was a debate early on in his mind about whether to have 7 ages or 9, because both numbers are fairly magical or mystic, and it was a matter of like, do I go for 7, like in the ancient world and the Bible, or 9, because 9 is associated with magic. I guess 7 is the sort of simpler option in the end, because 9, that's an awful lot of ages. So I wasn't surprised that he went that way, but I prefer 7 just from the fact that there is that solid ancient history and biblical background.
Hey Theresa, can you show some of the RJ handwritten notes? I think they're in, let's see, general miscellaneous notes folder. RJ handwritten notes to box 28F1.
I'm still showing off this.
Oh, gotcha. Sure.
Drive back attention to this before I just.
Can you zoom in, Theresa? We can't really read it.
She does not know that Asmodean was a prisoner of Rand, nor, of course, that he was killed by Dena. That was
What did you want to look at in miscellaneous?
yeah, in miscellaneous RJ handwritten notes 2, box 28F1. That's the way I have mine organized the same way. So.
Box 28.
Yeah, box 28.
Folder 1.
Yeah. And then it's RJ_handwritten_notes -2. So I just wanted to show them, like, you know, this is something that Linda brings up a lot, just all the parallelism. You can tell that, you know, you look through his notes, that he just, you know, these are things were on his mind as he was piecing the story together. If you ever needed any more proof that that was, these things were definitely part of what he was thinking, it's right there.
Because yesterday, someone actually brought up that very thing, you know, how much of this is there actual evidence for, you know, the sort of things that I write about? Well, there it is. It's not bad, and I certainly, you know, I do not have all the answers, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously some things there are more evidence for them than others, you know.
And some were developed after this was written, because that is actually quite early on.
Yes,
but you can see that from the
changed.
beginning, there was, the beginning was actually very Arthurian in concept, and it gradually incorporated other mythologies as he worked up other nations, because he really started off with Andor. Andor's very much in the Arthur myth, and then as he added the other nations in, he added other mythologies as well.
Yeah, and here you can see him start to play with names, with Merlin, Amerlin, but again, he twisted it so nicely that it's there, but it's not, at least for me, it's not just slapping me in the face every single time I read it, but it's there, right? If you want to, and he twists it really nicely, in my opinion. But yeah, it's fun to kind of see all the things that we talked about were definitely on his mind. By the way, can you guys read that from back there? Is it seeable?
His early notes are really spastic. There's a lot of stuff like this where you can tell he was just kind of brainstorming and, you know, trying to put together what kind of parallels he did want to use and what kind of parallels he didn't. Okay, we're going to hit some high points and then we're going to take questions. Anything you want to hit, Linda? I've got a couple of things in mind.
Okay, I've got two, I guess.
Okay.
One is early in the notes, because that just follows on naturally from this. He talks about, like, some of the folders are named White Goddess, and the White Goddess was a book written in the 1940s, and this by Robert Graves, who sort of he reverse engineered, if you like, the White Goddess as the White Goddess of birth, love and death. So it's a threefold goddess, which was something that he was very interested in from the get-go. But this was not, it was a slightly different take on the mother goddess. And both of them are inspired by the three phases of the moon. And the idea was that the White Goddess was sort of like the original matriarchal religion, which was displaced by patriarchal religions. And that basically Graves had re-engineered it, if you like. And this is exactly what Robert Jordan did himself in the books. Is he reverse engineered, which is his own term, the legends and history and myth in parallel with our own world.
While I'm on it, I just wanted to point out that Cat Swain was the name that he was planning on using before he even published the first book. Because a lot of people have wondered about that. Yeah, I think that she was something he came up with when he was writing book 7 or something.
But she's there almost on the first page, and her name is there.
She's around from the beginning. And he told people that when they asked, and they didn't believe him.
The other thing I was going to talk about is a more technical thing about the oath rod. He talks about the fact that in the Age of Legends, ordinary people could expect to live 200 years, and Aes Sedai as much as 800. Life expectancy on being bound depended in part on how old you were at the time. Now, you could actually bind people who couldn't channel, and someone channeled into the rod on their behalf. So bound in their 20s, they would not live to see 100, so it shortened half. It seemed to halve their lifespan. But if, say, they were 100, they would live another 20 to 25 years. And if bound at 150, they would probably live no more than 5. So it wasn't a simple halving of the maximum lifespan they might expect. It's this sort of strange sort of ratio thing. And a very strong channeler, bound in their first 50 to 70 years of life, could not expect to live much beyond 400. Bound at 300 to 400, they would live another 50 to 100 years at most. While bound in late life, they would have as little as 5 to 10 years remaining. And so he doesn't appear to have at this stage the idea that their lifespan depended on their strength in the power. He just seemed to think they would all have roughly, at this point, the same amount of, the same lifespan of about 800 years. So, or perhaps it wasn't, I mean, he does talk about a very strong channeler living to 800, but he doesn't, at this stage, he's not really specifying all the different stages in between, depending on history. So that's...
I didn't have one to cover specific to the what you just asked about Theresa.
Okay, one thing I wanted to hit was something that I don't believe has been shown at this panel before, because it was something that was not supposed to be in the notes at the library, and it kind of ended up there anyway. Hold up, let me find it. I might not be able to find it, and then I'm gonna feel bad.
So, what's the topic on this one?
I'll just leave it there for a little bit. Question back here?
The question I have is, were there any notes about the gender of Matt's child? And were there any notes about the future of Saudi which is essentially the monarchy, the inherited claim?
There's not anything about that, nothing at all about what happens after.
I just didn't know if parents were going to Saudi.
Nothing about what happens after. No, but that's for anything about the characters, yeah. It is literally supposed to, yeah, that's right. Yeah. And really isn't there. So.
Is there anything in there, whose idea was Henry's town? That whole town?
The stone soup town, as Brandon called it.
Yeah.
I think it might have been. We don't really know. I think it was Brandon.
It was probably Brandon, just
I think
because
so.
he said that he had to come up with that parallel on his own.
Yeah.
The reference, the stone soup thing was his.
Yeah, because even calling it that.
That's the genesis of it. Yeah, so it has to be Brandon. Of course, the concept of the bubbles of evil was Robert Jordan, and that was just his variation on that.
Was there any notes about Herman becoming so powerful in the book, and then like kind of having to be sidelined because he could just go around and kill people?
As far as the specifics of the last 3 books, those notes have not been published. So your questions on that, there's not much we can say except no, there isn't, because they haven't been published and they won't be for some years. Because they're being held back. That's what I'm saying. There's some that's being held back. Because they don't want an endless pointing of Brandon wrote this, Robert Jordan wrote that, because it actually lessens the whole legacy of the books. Yeah, exactly. Because these are little bits and pieces that Robert Jordan actually had wanted to have.
Well, he had actually written probably the majority of that scene.
Yeah.
So it was included in the outline, but it had already been written. That was one of the scenes that they confirmed that Robert Jordan actually had written. So,
I've always had my old Whitney theory about Norway. Did you find any notes related to Chatwayne's reaction with Norland, where any more on than what we see in the book on like her Ralston and stuff like that?
Okay, we don't find out anything more about Norla, Randy, but there is more on the Terangrial, though some of that is actually in the companion. Most of that is in the companion already. But I'm writing that up and should be up, not May, but maybe June on my blog.
Okay.
So they're next in line to be updated.
yes, Ted?
Is there any notes about the restriction on healing? Like you can't heal yourself and tell around the odd and someone else can heal you?
Not that I've found. I've done a lot of looking into the Tellerandriad as far as what notes are there to kind of give us even more data on the metaphysical side. But I didn't see anything that said anything that we didn't know. Again, a lot of these notes, when I look through them, a lot of them are about ideas that he had at one point and then obviously went, a different way. He didn't, at least my experience hasn't been that he goes, at night of dreams and writes even more metaphysics down that he didn't have before. A lot of it's what's already in the books, or something that he transformed from very early on. So yeah, not that there isn't, a lot of this stuff's kind of hard to keep in mind as far as there's so many notes. And so if you're not looking specifically for healing, you might not see it, but it might be there. So definitely something we can look for. Yep.
Is there any notes about how the sounding of the horn works, and is it a blending of Tellerandriad and physical world?
I wish there was something that explicit, because that's certainly something, but not, I don't know, I didn't see anything, Linda, did you?
No, there isn't, and again, that's touching on stuff that's in the last book. And
Okay.
Are there any notes on the earliest time the dream chart is referenced? Like when the idea of the dream chart being separate but with Tellerandriad?
I haven't seen that concept in the early notes. In other words, pre-Eye of the World, where he was forming those concepts. I don't necessarily see evidence for all of the things, all the mechanisms when it comes to Tellerandriad that he put in. In other words, everything he put in the books is not, well laid out in his notes. Does that make sense? So, yeah. But the dream chart, while possible, clearly as far as the metaphysics are concerned, I didn't see that particular name, if that's what you're saying.
Yeah, because I don't think the term was in the books until towards the end.
Yeah, but it might be in the notes, again, that is the whole Linda caveat. I'll call it the Linda caveat. You're welcome. The Linda caveat, there we go.
I know this is probably boring to most people, but he had this typewritten file, advice to new writers, because he got a lot of people who would mail him and ask him for advice. So this was probably just a stock thing that he mailed out to everybody. I just came across it. So I wanted to point out, there's a lot of stuff like this, like clerical stuff in the notes at the library.
these days of computers, it's pretty old-fashioned. The person who asked the question about healing, I've got a lot of stuff that I've extracted, ready to be written up, edited into my essays, and there was nothing extra on healing at all that we didn't have in the companion or in the books.
Linda writes this stuff up for her blog. There's also some pages for the Dragonmount Wattback that I'm working on that will cover some stuff in the notes because she and I have different things that interest us, so you might want to hit up both. I'm not exactly sure when the Dragonmount Wattback is going to be ready. We are working on it, but it's a humongous project to overhaul now that all the books are done. So that will be up, and of course there will be a page about time when Jared killed Asmodean and McLean and various other things, and we should have all the details there. So,
Whereas, like,
Matt, you can write something right there in there too if you want.
oh, yeah, I was going to say I will be adding more in-world mechanics to the essays that I've got on that.
Did the notes ever indicate that Egwene and Gawain, like, was that always supposed to happen? Or, because it seems like Gilad was who she was going to be with, and then it seems like a switch.
It wasn't a switch, it was a temporary switch that was planned from the beginning. Apparently, this is my estimation of it. My estimation is that she was always intended to be with Gilad, but she was just going to take that little side trip with Gawain until he died. And then she was going to end up with Gilad anyway. That is my impression. I don't know if Linda has a different impression or what. That's just what it seems like to me.
I actually think he had this sort of multi-pronged approach in that he had various ways this could go. Just as Swan saw, men saw that there were at least two different paths that hers and Gawain's life could take, and he was just going to pick one as he came upon it. So I think he was an options open type of range.
And also Min's viewing of Bearland was that she was going to fall head over heels in love with the man in white, but Min did specifically say that it wasn't known if the man in white was going to return her feelings. So with the way that Brandon went, Gilad did return her feelings. That's how that worked out. But that path was always open to where Gilad could just not be interested in Bearland at all.
In my opinion, the most of the content is if you're really interested in finding out where a lot of the concepts came from, right? The notes are really going to give you a fun kind of run backwards of, oh, this is how he pieced it together. That's where a lot of the notes are, is how did this idea come about? Not necessarily once he had the idea, what are all the variations he came up with after that? Those aren't as explicit, but certainly, if you, like I think Linda brought it up, you want to know where the Ogier came from, like what were the concepts that came together, what crazy ideas did he have, where were people going to go before he finally made his choice and went with it that way. That's where a lot of the material exists in the notes. That's the fun stuff. I really enjoy that stuff, but it doesn't unfortunately have a lot of the answers of why did he make those choices, or if he changed them after he got into the books, why did he do that? We don't. It's unclear.
Yes, question.
What were the ordering, the Elfin and Eilfin inspirations for them? Nothing, or?
Yes, I think we covered that one. I think that one was last year.
Yeah.
And I think that was fairies and why can't I think of the other? Shoot, it was obvious at the time when we.
Yeah, the genies.
The genies
Making, so they had a few different sources, and though he was exploring which aspects of each one he would take, and then as is typical of him, once he actually worked it up, he doesn't really talk about it much after that because it's in his head. He doesn't actually need to. So a lot of this is just workings out, and then once he's got the thing going, that's it. So you don't get any more after that.
I've got this bit about good and evil on the screen, just what we were talking about earlier. It's in his earliest notes about the concept of how evil can't be destroyed because it's counterbalanced to good. And the whole free choice thing. These were written before The Eye of the World was published, so this is really old. Well, I think we have 1 minute left. Should we wrap it up? Look, we can do this panel. We're going to do this panel every year. If you have questions, feel free to email them to me through the JordanCon email, which is on the website. I think it's just wheelofTime@jordancon.org. Or you can contact Linda, or you can contact Matt through Theresa. Just send us your questions and we will do our best to dig in the notes and see what we can find, and we'll see you next year.
How you feeling, buddy? A little rough. Yeah, me too. Late night, man. Yeah, I know it's rough. You were ready before we were having.
Red outline. Do you remember where that one was? I feel stupid now. Oh, this is it. Here we go. I believe this outline was made by Alan. And some of this is just stuff that's copied from Robert Jordan's late notes, like all of this stuff right here was basically the first page of every single file that Robert Jordan was using when he was writing the last book. And one thing that I found particularly interesting about this outline is this part, which there's various evidence of this throughout the rest of the notes.
Yeah,
As
he
far as
always
what's supposed to be in there.
expected the
Yes.
mother to be a mother for real.
Yes, Egwene was supposed to be pregnant at the end of the series. And after Gawain died, this isn't a Galad file, isn't it? I'm gonna have to do a better, more detailed presentation of this in the coming year.
Yeah, she's definitely pregnant. The mother will become a mother. And then he debated about whether she would or wouldn't die after pregnancy.
Yeah, there's something in Robert Jordan's notes about how when Gawain was dying, he asked Galad to promise him to take care of Egwene and the baby.
Yeah, I think I have it right here. It's Gawain's death, Galad is present, Galad promises to protect Egwene.
What file is that?
It's Galad 59. I structured mine in a characters folder.
Yeah, that's okay, I can find it.
It's at the very bottom.
Yes, here we go. Gawain either tells him that Rand is his half-brother or starts him on the way to knowing or confirms something. This comes after Gawain has married Egwene and she is pregnant. There was something, though, about him asking Galad to take care of the baby. I don't see that in here. Which is interesting because in The Dragon Reborn, there's actually some potential foreshadowing for that. Because Matt says something ridiculous about asking somebody to do something that they weren't going to do. And Tom says, you might as well ask the Amerlin to marry the Lord Captain Commander of the White Cloaks.
Oh, yeah.
So I always hoped that was foreshadowing, and I really wanted Gawain to die and Egwene to end up with Goliath. And apparently that's kind of where he was planning on going with it. Which, doesn't surprise me, but yeah. But I guess the most interesting part here is that there was nothing really in Robert Jordan's notes to contradict that as far as they were concerned when they were writing the outline for Memory of Light. That was still in. So I think Brandon has talked about this on book tours about how he felt like when Jordan got to that point that he would have decided to kill somebody off, one of the main characters, once he got to that point, and he felt like he should do the same. So that was his choice. Egwene. Yeah. So yeah, that's not in the original Memory of Light outline anywhere. But obviously it eventually became part of the story. All right, should we, do we have any more points to hit? Did you have something in Shanchan 58, Linda?
Yeah, it was about the Adam. The Adams, both are discussed there.
Do you know what page?
I called it up, I've just got my list.
By the way, in the same outline, if you scroll all the way in that outline for A Memory of Light, it does say Egwene is nearly killed and is saved by Ebony. How do you pronounce her name? Say it again.
Again.
Egion, isn't it? That's how Maria pronounces it.
I have my own pronunciations, okay? We all do. Like Enwin or Egwene.
So, are you on the Shanchan one?
In that pile, I don't know where exactly it would be.
Oh,
It's, so you have a word.
yeah.
While you guys are looking, I'll read you this one. Whatever. Luke and Pat and Fane show up for the last battle. Perhaps they kill each other trying to kill Rand. So anyways, there's lots of little kind of twists that, especially the Memory of Light outline, kind of interesting that maybe didn't come, or didn't happen exactly the way it was proposed.
So, an Adam stops, has a buffer to stop any Damani from being burned out, and that was put in probably so that a Damani couldn't burn herself out to stop being held captive. So, and another effect of the Adam is that wearing it somehow buffers the shock of having the bond to the warder broken, which is an unforeseen side effect since the Shanchan Aes Sedai did not know about the warder bond. Yeah, I mean, the Adam had these features. The buffer against being burned out is deliberately put there, but it also happens to buffer an Aes Sedai who's had their warder killed during capture or afterwards from feeling the effects of that. So basically it's like the Sundam is controlling her emotions enough, or the horror of being bound is enough to prevent them from even feeling their warders, the pain of having the warder bond broken. It also talks quite a lot about the male Adam in that particular file, I think.
I saw something about it above.
Yeah, because they're actually constructed quite similarly in the way the links work. But apparently when Semiraj talks to Rand about how the male Adam doesn't use nausea as an inhibitor, in his original idea it certainly did. And that's in that particular file. But it's actually far more extreme. And also apparently channeling Saidar near the male Adam, like while it's being worn, is extremely painful for the male wearing the Adam. I don't think that feature was really shown during Rand's capture by Semiraj because she was so busy actually inflicting pain on him. According to that, she wouldn't have needed to do anything except channel.
So now that we've hit our high points, we can start taking questions. I know that there's at least a couple of you here who have questions, which we might or might not be able to answer. And we can actually note down these questions and look into them for future years. Go ahead, Ebony.
So I was on Facebook, somebody wanted to ask if there's any proof that Albienda was pregnant before the body swap, or she was pregnant after he wore his body. Because actually me and could argue on this all the time. But a fan actually wanted to know if there was any notes that told you one way or the other.
I don't believe there's any evidence. I
I'm
always
opening up the
assumed-
end of file now, but I can't remember anything on the children.
Which is why I argued with you about it, because like, I bet you didn't say, so I could be right on this one.
Happy thought.
Did the children have dark eyes?
They did have dark eyes and dark hair, and that's why you argued with me.
Yeah.
But I want the ending that I want.
Don't we all?
And I've already been through it, so. Has to listen.
That is something that I will look into for future years.
I'm just having a quick skim now, but obviously won't be quick.
Yes, Ted.
Alright, so at the very end, spoiler alert, Rand says that the Dark One never was the enemy. So who was the enemy? Is there anything he knows about that? Or what was the Dark One and not the enemy?
Yeah, I don't think there's.
Actually, yes, there is actually indications. I've got that in my.
Well, it's the same indications that's in the book, really, is that humans are the enemy and what they do is the enemy. But it's the same, I don't think there's anything more concrete in the notes than there was in the books. It's the same implication either way.
Yeah.
But it's something that I can look into.
Okay, so here's the actual paragraph. In a final confrontation, Rand binds Shaitan away from the world once more. Shaitan, he says, evil, which as Shaitan is, just as the Creator is good, cannot be destroyed any more than can good. Evil must be opposed by people who choose to champion good, but without evil as a counterbalance to good, free will is no more. The removal of evil from the world would destroy humanity as surely as the removal of good. So that's really what he's talking about. That's the actual enemy. People of future ages and the people of his own age will always have to make their own choice between good and evil. This was right in the earliest notes. So this was the concept he had all along, that the Dark One wasn't the enemy, that destroying choice was the actual enemy.
I remember a lot of people thought that was Brandon.
Yeah, I know.
Writing that
I'm
piece,
saying
and
it's
a
right,
lot of
isn't it?
a lot of reaction to the book was, oh, I hated how he pontificated about the good and evil, and you have to have one without the other. That's so Brandon. So,
And invariably, it was people who really just wanted who would win in a fight. They didn't want a theological solution, but we were always going to have both things happening. The fights, be it on a theological level or the fights on a physical level. Both of those things were to happen.
Yes, Chris?
Back to Demon Dread for a minute. I know you said there's nothing really in the notes about what he was doing, if it was not Shara. You had, I'm assuming you had a conversation with Maria or period to ask if there was anything to talk about it.
Not extended, and I did have a conversation with Brandon about it on Reddit, which everyone can read. So yeah, actually I can just send you a link to that. Do you remember the Theoryland thread where I originally announced it? I think that was linked on Reddit, and that's where me and Brandon had the conversation. So he didn't really go into as much detail as you might like, but I think there's a lot of clues in what he does not say about that, more than what he does say. So, hold up. Oh, I'm sorry. The question was, have I talked to Maria or Harriet or anybody about what Demandred was doing in Shara, as far as, how that relates to the fact that we didn't find anything in the notes about what he was doing. So yeah, I talked to Brandon about that. I guess the most important thing I can pull out of that for now is that he took responsibility for not having foreshadowed it very much. And I told him, look, that wasn't your responsibility, that was, Robert Jordan's responsibility. And he kind of left you with that to where, it was kind of too late to really do any foreshadowing. But the fact that he took responsibility for it personally, probably says something. Yes?
Are there many notes on the outrigger, possible outriggers?
No.
Not at all.
No, Robert Jordan left 2 sentences about the outriggers. Or maybe it was 1 sentence, they could never decide. There might have been a semicolon in there instead of a period. But the sentences were basically, Matt was dicing in a gutter somewhere, and Perrin was on a ship thinking about how he was about to have to go kill one of his best friends, which is presumably Matt because he's with the Xiaoqian. So that's it. That's all that he left about the outriggers. So that is exactly why they're not being written. Yes?
Are there any notes about anything in the books that we're going to go to the land of bad men?
No. Well, there's hardly anything about the land of bad men at all.
No, there's not. And there's very little about Shara. So those 2 places are just blanks.
And there's some stuff that we missed, but this is the kind of thing that we looked for in particular. The areas that we don't know as much about, we looked for that. We looked for stuff about, for example, Slayer. We got everything we could find about him deliberately because we know so little. Stuff like that, we made sure to cover all the bases. There just wasn't much of anything.
Do you have any notes on Morgan and his role in Powell?
His role in the final book? Not really.
There's little notes in the final book because those are held in abeyance, so they're not actually accessible.
Do we know how many notes are held in abeyance? Do we know how much is still just not released to us? I have some feeling that part I didn't mention it.
Like boxes.
Okay. So I know there are, I believe, Robert Jordan in his notes put much more about the creator of the Dark One than we have. But I know Robert Jordan's feeling was that we shouldn't know anything about that wasn't involved. And I was hoping we'd see something in the notes. You just don't see much, but it's my understanding that there's more notes. So there's more we don't have yet.
And they're to be held in abeyance for some years, so we're not likely to see them anytime soon.
Matt, did you, last year, I don't know if I could make this up, you said about portal stones and Unreal or something like that?
I mean, I'm not sure.
Whether there was a note where he referred to the portal stone as an Unreal, which is like the only time that's ever even related, or...
Yeah, I remember what you're saying. I'm not sure exactly what notes it is. Let me see if I can find it before we're over here. Yeah.
I was just wondering, you said that you didn't want us to know much of anything beyond what was in World on the creator of Dark One. Was there anything at all that had any information about mechanism of action or the true power or anything like that?
No, not that we don't know from the books itself. I remember asking Brandon, I did an interview with him a long time ago around the Gathering Storm, and I asked a variety of questions about those kind of things. And he said at one point that there are answers, which is always awesome to hear, but we don't have them yet. But again, I don't know if he's speaking because he thought he saw them in the notes, but maybe the answer wouldn't be as elaborate as there may be answers, but it might not be a paragraph, it might be 3 words. We don't know what the answer might look like.
On the portal stones, does it ever explain why they happen to have steps that others have not? So there was like no significance found on those letters.
There may well be, but they're just lost to knowledge.
While I have this file of, oh sorry, can you
Well, I was just going to say that there's a whole theme in the books on losing knowledge and stuff that's there but it's inexplicable. And that's why we often don't get all the notes on anything, because it's to be inexplicable, just as it is.
I was looking for stuff for Austin about Morden's role in the last battle in this file because we don't really know where else to look. This is the only one that we really have. And I just wanted to point out that the last battle was originally supposed to take place near the ruins of Camelin, which was kind of everybody's theory because of the whole Battle of Camelon thing, but then they eventually decided to change the location to somewhere quite a bit further away from Camlin. But yeah, apparently, I don't know if Robert Jordan didn't leave a whole lot of notes about that, and they just decided based on the Battle of Camlin that that's where it was going to be, and then they changed their minds, or what? I have no idea. For those who don't know what the Battle of Camlin is, that's a Arthurian legend thing. Arturian, or however you pronounce it.
Yeah, question back there.
Hi, were there any notes on trying to find a way to get the three boys together again for the last battle, and why you decided that it couldn't go that route?
I don't remember anything in particular. Of course, a lot of this stuff would be in the notes that weren't available at the library. The stuff that they gave Brandon specifically for writing the last book. I don't recall anything in particular from the earlier notes about that, about you guys.
Well, I know that there are a lot of, I don't know specifically that question, I believe we might find something that's going to probably speak to something we hope, right? It's something early on that might have been signaled, and we would say, oh, that's what was supposed to happen, and it changed. Because there's a lot of miscellaneous notes that are before or right around the time of the Great Hunt, or before, the Eye of the World itself. So a lot of these things are really old. I'll look if you want to come back and ask that question, or come check with me here in like a couple minutes. But yeah, we can answer that one. So.
I was curious because there's that famous artwork of the three boys where that didn't actually happen. So.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Stop right there. That's a statement.
Is there something specific you'd like to read louder? Or are you just
Just all of it.
Just all of it?
Yeah, we're trying to read it all.
Sorry, you want me to? We can be quiet.